so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life? Well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. Also, before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about a few sponsors that not only help to make it possible to produce this show 5 days a week, but that I'm also genuinely passionate about promoting. Especially since they're helping to fund all the cool projects we have in the works, such as the Positive Head app, the docuseries that I'm intending to begin shooting within the next year, and whatever else we dream up over here at Positive Headquarters to help spread consciousness across the planet. Now, if you're short on time or just super excited for today's topic and want to dive right in and skip these ads, as well as me reading reviews or addressing any other business, feel free to fast forward about
4 minutes
ahead to get right into today's show. That being said, I strongly encourage you to listen because the reason I'm passionate about my sponsors is because they've made a huge impact in my own life, which is why I've aligned with these organizations. And I firmly believe they can do the same for you too. The first longtime stellar supporter of the show that I want to mention is Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online with over 8,000 video titles. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. The second sponsor I'm extremely passionate about promoting is Purium. The reason I've aligned Positive Head with Purium is because I wholeheartedly stand behind their mission to end human suffering by making superfoods easily available to everyone, with the ultimate goal to help restore mankind's harmony with nature in the process. I mean, what a noble mission, right? It's no mystery that you need to bring your mind, body, and spirit into balance if a person truly intends to manifest the greatest and grandest version of themselves. And for me, for years, I honestly felt like I was ahead of the curve in the mind and spirit category, but I was only average at best in the level of care I administered to my body. Sure, I was healthy-ish when it came to the food I put into my system, but after doing a Purium 40-day transformation with a 10-day metabolic reset and cleanse, I can honestly say I have reestablished my relationship with food in a very positive way. Not only did I drop the extra weight that I was carrying as a natural byproduct of the transformation, so that I'm now at my ideal body weight, but I continue to feel like my best self by starting every day with an organic Purium power shake that is made from raw superfood ingredients that were meticulously harvested, thoughtfully combined to optimize the nutritional impact it has on my body. I view the shake as plant medicine, really, and it happens to taste really delicious, and I can make it in about 30 seconds. There's actually 4 core Purium products that I take every day, and honestly, I intend to do so for the rest of my life for a very scientifically sound reason. And if you want to learn more about those reasons, you can go check out my video at positivehead.com/transformation, where I go into more detail. If you end up buying any of the Purium products, be sure and use the code POSITIVEHEAD, all one word, for a 25% discount. Secondarily, the other great thing about Purium is that it is also a new school, highly ethical network marketing company. Now, I'm no Richard Branson or Warren Buffett when it comes to business, But I am proud to say a company I founded was Zero Startup Capital back in 2010, was recognized as an Inc. fastest growing private company in the US 5 years later in 2015. So I do think it's safe to say I probably know a bit more than the average person when it comes to business. And like Richard Branson and Warren Buffett, I believe network marketing is a brilliant model when it's implemented ethically with high vibe products like Purium. Few people realize that over 80% of women that make six figures a year in the US do so through network marketing. So why am I going into all this? Well, to let you know, if you end up loving the Purium products as much as I do, and also happen to be looking to create a passive income stream, you can also sign up to become a Purium brand partner. And if you want to learn more about that, go check out my video and several others that go into greater detail about network marketing and becoming a brand partner at positivehead.com/transformation. And if you ultimately sign up or get products, remember, of course, to use the code positivehead, all one word. All right, all you positive heads, on this week's Powwow episode, I am very excited to have David Hrostoski here with me on the show. And if you recognize the unique last name, he is indeed the brother of Michael Hrostoski, who is a dear friend of mine, brother, who's been on the show multiple times. And David, when I found out we had the same birthday and everything that he is up to, I'm like, Michael, get your brother on the show right away. He's an author of the fresh off the press Ascension Manual for Planet Earth. Also the host of a podcast, the Highlight Reel, REAL podcast. And just super excited to have you here, David. And how appropriate. Here we are. It's the 25th of July. Our birthday's on the 28th. And right good. In the perfect timing. So good to have you, man.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, likewise.
I love that you got our last name down too from Michael's podcast. That's awesome. Didn't have to do the pre-show coaching on the last name.
Yeah, no, I've been trained well at this point, and it's funny because awesome. For those of you who haven't heard, you can go back and the several episodes with Michael co-hosting, and amazing guy, such brilliant insight. And when we first met, actually, only like 6 months ago now. Seems like much longer, but because we spent a fair amount of time together, but we got talking, and I went into my usual, at some point I go into my excited story about all my birthday synchronicity, and he's like, guess what? That's my brother's birthday. And it's so great because it just synchronistically fell that here we are, recording days before. And part of my kind of lengthy birthday synchronicity story involves July 25th as well, the day we're recording.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah, it's so pretty much. Cool. So let's be really predictable, if we could here, David. And I'd like to ask you the same question I always start off with. You're in an elevator. The gal next to you looks over, says, "What's your passion?" You got 10 floors to answer. What do you say?
I mean, I think it depends on who's in the elevator. First off, I think one of the things I actually love and respect most about the little tidbits that I've kind of taken from listening to pieces of your podcast is just your willingness to lean in and feel those openings. So I think depending on who's in the elevator, right? I've heard you say, like, I could feel that it was about time to get ready for the talk. I think if there was someone who was really open to that, honestly, I think because of channeling, like since I started channeling, I check in a lot. So I think what I would do at the very beginning is I would check in and I would say, like, hey, what's here? I think that, that's my favorite question to ask my guides, Bergale, just like, what's here? Right. And I think based on that, I would kind of tailor my answer based really on the person. I kind of believe that everyone's moving through. This is some of the things that Bergale teaches, the being that I channel, is basically that there's different levels of clearance. It's kind of it's a funny word. It's almost like a governmental clearance, but the basic idea is that there's there's these kind of fundamental worldviews, and based on that worldview, certain messages make more sense than others. And I think just in day-to-day conversation, we've always kind of felt that when someone may not have room for our fullest expression, or when someone has just vast space and we're telling them things that we've never told anyone.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think it would really end up being tailored to the individual, but it would probably be something along the lines of synchronicity, or talking about channeling, or talking about these phenomena. Every once in a while, when someone asks what I do, I'll be able to drop like, oh yeah, I'm a channel, and like I just released a book called The Ascension Manual for Planet Earth, and it's really on the kind of the future of our species and where we're going as a planet, and really being able to align with whole-centric worldviews. But yeah, I mean, that's the real true answer. I think I could try to give like an elevator speech for this podcast, but I just want to kind of be as real as possible with that too, that I think so much of what I'm doing, I mean, since I started channeling, it's really integrated into my life in a really profound and kind of continual basis. Wow.
Yeah. And I think that's a very wise answer, because it's true. We are constantly assessing, who's standing next to me in the elevator is probably going to determine what I say. Absolutely. Although, I sometimes filter myself maybe less than others. So I might just unload on them, and it doesn't necessarily mean that's the best choice. But I'm more likely than not, if they open themselves up to something like asking me about passion, like, they're going to get it whether they hate
elevator as you, right? I mean, they made the choice to walk in, so
exactly, suckers. Man. But yeah, man. So I won't go into the whole birthday synchronicity, because my listeners have probably heard it a million times, and I don't know. Well, have I told you? Did I direct you to a podcast where I actually break the whole thing down?
You did, but I didn't get a chance to listen to it before we hopped on. So, I mean, that piece of me just wanted to come on fresh so I could have my genuine reaction here, kind of from the synopsis.
Okay, well, now I feel like I need to tell it then. Okay, I'm going to try and tell it. For those of you who've heard it like 10 times or 5 times over the last 3 years, bear with me. I'm going to try and tell it really quickly. So, awesome. Because it just seems too perfect. Like, here we are days before, you're July 28th, I'm July 28th. And, so, my dad was 28, David, and he had me on July 28th. So it was his 28th birthday, and it's his birthday as well, right? So also it's his grandmother's birthday. So not only was it her birthday, her mother died on that day. Wow. Okay, so a whole line there on my dad's side, down to me, and then my former business partner and one of my very best friends at one time, probably my best friend for many, many, many years. Now villain in my story. We had a big falling out in business where he did some very deceptive things. His grandmother, July 28th. Also his baby's mama, July 28th. About 6 years ago, I went to see my favorite music artist on July 28th. And I met someone that I consider like a soulmate energy that I'm no longer with. Her birthday was July 25th, which happens to be today. Now, my whole family, my mom is July 24th, yesterday. One of my best friends, who's a regular co-host, July 30th. Roommate, July 31st. Brother, July 19th. Like this whole week, it just nonstop, right? And so she was July 25th. But what was really a trip with her, I found out, she had my family on my dad's side, who are July 28th, my dad, my grandmother, and great who died on that day. They're all from a tiny town in North Carolina called Anson County, right? Well, this ex that I met on July 28th, her former boyfriend was named Anson and committed suicide on July 28th. And and then it's kind of continued, like where I met your brother in Costa Rica. The person who bunked, there's over 100 of us at this hostel before we went to the Eco Village, before we went to Envision. And anyway, that first night I got bunked up with someone, and his birthday turns out was July 28th. I found out the next day, and I had been telling this story at a festival once, and the guy's like, wow, that's a really weird story. And the guy I was telling to, his name was Ryan. My brother's name is Ryan. Now, this guy, Ryan, I was telling the story to, Ryan said, my brother, Brandon, and our dad have July 28th. So after I told him the story, he's Orion, Brandon. I came back to camp and said, oh my gosh, guys, I was telling the story. This guy, told me his name's Ryan, his brother Brandon, A girl hears my telling the story, sticks her head out of her tent, who just set up camp next to us. She's like, my birthday's July 28th. Now the guy that was camping with her is my roommate. That's July 31st all these years later. He moved to my town from hours away and ended up staying with me temporarily, and then I let him move in. And it just on and on. The same guy in Vision, his name turns out bunked under me. His name was Ryan. His brother is Brandon. And it just goes. Last 2 weekends ago, I see at an event on the beach this girl wearing my shirt, this kind of obscure shirt that I own. I go up to her. I'm like, oh, I have that shirt. Turns out we get talking. Comes up, her birthday, July 28th. So it's just like on and on. It keeps unfolding. Wow. Now here you are. So that's my ever unfolding is concisely as I can tell the story, birthday story. So it's just so much. It's so cool, huh? And it just keeps unfolding. And in just the fact that we didn't coordinate for you to be here right now during this time.
Oh no, not at all.
I mean, we talked months ago.
It fell through for the both of us. It just didn't work out, and then this was the only time available was July 25th. I was like, you know what? I think that's perfect. It's close to the birthday. I know he has a story. He wants to tell me about July 28th. I think it's perfect.
Yeah, so that's it, man. It just keeps going and going.
Wow.
So as soon as Michael, your brother, and I have gotten to be very close friends in a very short amount of time, and it's like we're just really meeting now, but it's like I already know we're like soul family. It's like without question. And so it's just such a fascinating thing to see these ever unfolding threads of connectivity that seem to be getting more and more blatant in my world. I don't know about you.
Yeah, and I mean, and how cool that your like lineage and ancestry ends up is perfectly creating this synchronicity, and then here you are, such a huge spokesperson of synchronicity. I mean, it's so perfect. Like of all the lineages to birth a Brandon that has a July 28th birthday and this huge synchronicity, it's awesome to see you doing this work and I mean promoting so much about the just kind of magical and mystical nature of our reality.
Yeah, so I haven't had a lot of multidimensional experience per se. I mean, how many of my friends are either opening up to channeling, mediums, having experience with, extraterrestrial entities, astral travel, out of body experience. I haven't had a lot of stuff like that. What I have had is a lot of grounded synchronicity. I mean, it's literally, and listeners will know that, it's like almost every day. It's like, all right, guys, here's the latest, and I feel like I've gotten really good at connecting the dots and seeing the threads of connectivity. So it just opens up more and more and more. So yeah, that's, it is great that it's definitely become a part of my story, this whole, birthday thing. And I'll tell you one other funny kind of piece to it, that, you'll appreciate. So, I did have one intuitive on a while back. And she was like, oh, Brandon, I told her my story, at some point, and she's like, oh, I'm going to meditate on this. I'm going to go dig into the Akashic records or something like that. I'm going to find out what the deal is with your birthday. So I'm expecting something like really juicy about past lives and she comes back and she goes, well, I didn't get much except for, this is just going to be an ongoing sign for you of connectivity that's going to continue to play out. She goes, but I did find this. And she sent me an article where they did a survey in England a few years back to try and figure out what the best possible day to be born on was. And guess what it was? The result. It's so funny. It was so funny for me. I thought I was finally going to get my multi-dimensional answer, and she grounds it in nothing, pretty vague answer. And then she grounds it in some study of 5,000 people in England. And this is the most fortuitous day. And it was just it was funny to me.
I love it. I mean, my kind of catchphrase for the highlight reel is grounded spirituality in the 21st century. And I think that's what I'm actually most fascinated with. I'm a channel, so the kind of multidimensionality, the weirdness of it is almost inevitable. But I mean, I'm constantly looking to ground all of these spiritual ideas because there's almost this separation in the spiritual community versus the scientific community of what reality is. And I think there's I mean, I know there's a way to integrate these understandings. I see it in my own life, and I see it in lives of beautiful individuals like you. And I think we're still learning how to articulate that. And I mean, synchronicities to me show up is just as unexplainable as something like channeling. And I think in many ways they point to lots of the same phenomena, but you're doing it in a way that's almost repeatable and proven. And I just love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting to see how, we all have different angles, and it doesn't mean that things don't change. And all of a sudden you don't, maybe at one moment you have never had any experience like that. And I mean, I hear from listeners all the time, oh my gosh, this opened up for me. And now, I have had what I feel like is Kundalini awakening type experiences recently, which are interesting. And it's so, you never know what tomorrow brings. But I think back to an Akashic record reading, like my very first interview, and she's a Akashic record reader, and she was like, Brandon, your biggest thing here is to make sure and not get lost in the clouds and the ether, but actually bring the stuff down to earth and ground it in the earth. So I definitely resonate and feel with that, that is true. And so I'm very good with my path and very blessed. But I love to hear, like, I'm very curious to hear about your experience opening up to channeling and that sort of thing. And I want to hear all about the podcast. Before we dive into that, I would, it might be good. I got so excited talking to you. I've been so looking forward to this. Why don't we back up just a little bit and hear a little bit about your story and how you ended up, on this unique path that you're on?
Yeah, I mean, I think in many ways they're kind of the same question. I'll just kind of continue it on into channeling. But I mean, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. I mean, you've probably heard some of this story from Michael. We share quite a few similarities at the beginning of our journey. I mean, we were both raised Jehovah's Witnesses, and I think I left quite a bit earlier than him. I think because I had him to model. I saw that there was something outside. I saw that I wouldn't die. I saw that everything would be okay. So I ended up leaving quite a bit earlier, probably 16 or 17. It was a slow transition out. But then I just went fairly traditional path. I mean, I had just lost my mother in 2011, and that was really what kind of started to really pull me away. Because one of my main reasons for staying in the religion was I just wanted to see her happy, and I wanted her to kind of just at least believe that I would be there with her in the paradise earth that she believed in. Like, it was hard to take that away from her, because she was so sick the entirety of my life. So I stayed. But when I was 17, it was a week after or right before, it was right around the time I graduated from high school. She tried to commit suicide and then ended up passing away a couple weeks later. And that was the awakening. That was it. I mean, Michael and I went on a 4,200 mile road trip around America and spread her ashes. And I met more people than I'd ever met in my life, because I just basically stayed in Tucson before that, and met entrepreneurs in particular who were like, hey, you don't actually have to go to college, right? Like, you can go, and I mean, you can go, and it's okay, but you can go and build an entrepreneurial life. And I was like, what? That doesn't even make sense. I don't know anything about the world. I'm a Jehovah's Witness boy who thinks everything is worldly and bad, and I'm just coming out. Please tell me more. And so I did end up going to college because I had a full ride. But after 3 years, I ended up leaving, and it took about a year in Tucson just to kind of get my affairs in order. And then went to California. And that was kind of the beginning of my real entrepreneurial journey. I ran a dating for entrepreneurs retreat with my buddy Max, and went out to California, and it started everything. But I think my journey was very unspiritual from the time I left the religion. And I think almost from a beautiful orchestration, synchronicity, everything is perfect perspective, I just needed to pull away from that version of God, and I needed to pull away from that version of reality and just kind of see what else was there. So I just went heavy into entrepreneurship. I was a coach for a couple of years, and then it ended up transitioning into doing the back-end architecture. So I would build sales funnels, I'd do all the tech, I'd link the calendar, do all the things, was basically building sales funnels and architecting sales funnels for 6 and 7 figure coaches, and wanted to build an agency. I was like, all right, I want to build $1 million agency. And my buddy Amateo that I met about a year earlier is having a business retreat. And I'm like, okay, cool. I would love to go to this business retreat and kind of see what you're doing with your mastermind. And I get there, and he goes, yes, man. So it was in Mount Shasta, by the way, which I didn't think anything of. I was like, okay. But he's like, yeah, so we're doing
very
this business
spiritual
retreat.
place.
Yeah, right. And I've always known he was a spiritual guy, but it was like the massive momentum mastermind. It was about business building. And we get there and we're sitting in the hot tub before I'm helping him set up. And he says, yeah, man, so I'm basically going to teach for 3 days on like metaphysics and on the nature of reality. I was like, oh, okay. At the time, I was like a pretty hardcore atheist because I was really rebounding from some kind of metaphysical and spiritual experiences I had throughout my journey, and a little bit of a spiritual awakening, but I mean, rebounded fully back into atheism. And And I turned to my buddy Amateo in the hot tub and I go, yeah, man, I'm just kind of afraid of everything spiritual right now. And he goes, all right, like we're going to do our best. We're going to see what we can do. If you need help, talk to me. Of course, he was very kind through the whole process. But I go in and it's like reality started to make sense again. He was teaching from the Kabbalah and about the tree of life, and he was teaching about the 7 sacred rays and some creation myths and like deep metaphysical and esoteric contexts of reality. And I think I still had questions, but I was in enough of an open state where I was like, okay, there's much more available to these existential questions that I've been having than I thought there was. I thought everyone was just entirely confused. I thought everyone didn't know what was going on. But it's possible, it seems, to start to unpack some of this. And then I watched him channel, man, and it wasn't my friend anymore. Like I couldn't. Wow. I've always considered myself an empath. I've always been highly empathetic. I can feel people, and when I felt this being come in, I was like, this is not my friend. Like this is an entirely different consciousness, and the messages that came through were incredible. So I was super blown open, just in this weird kind of space of, okay, I think this might be true. Channeling might be true. All of my reality conceptions are entirely wrong. What am I going to do? And then the very next day, another woman comes in and she decides, not decides, it was planned, but she ends up channeling too. And she leads this galactic contact meditation. And during this meditation, I see kind of with my third eye, there's like this energetic white blob, almost this like nebulous blob thing that I see kind of descending from the roof. Like my eyes are closed, but I see this light coming down in my field of vision with my eyes closed, and I hear like a hey. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, hey, wow, like, can you like hear me? And I start having a conversation with this being. Wow. And that really started it all. I ended up talking to this being. He said his name was Juvael, and I was like, okay, cool. And I ended up kind of coming out and the woman, like, I ended up confirming lots of the things. I was like, yeah, like, I think what I got was his name was Juvael, and he's like from Arcturus. Like, I don't know what the star systems mean. Oh, wow. And she was like, yep, like that's exactly what we're getting on our end. There's an Arcturian being that's really strong for you here. And
well, we have a synchronicity to share with that when you're done here in a minute. That's great.
I love it. But that really started my journey of kind of the path from deep atheism and skepticism into a place where I was talking to this being, but just challenging everything. I was like, all right, so your name's Juvael and you're from Arcturus. Like, tell me what you do. And like, tell me why I should believe you. Tell me why this isn't just a fragment of my consciousness making this up that I'm accessing through some sort of flow state, deep meditation. Like, I just went at it. And I have all of these conversations. And there was this one conversation that really started to shift things for me. He goes, okay, try to say things exactly how I'm saying them, with the energetic I'm saying them. If you think you can do this and be me, then be me. And I say the exact same words and the exact same energy I tried to. And it's so different. It's like all the energy fell flat. There was nothing there. And I'm like, okay, like there has to be something to this more than just me making this up or accessing some piece of my brain. And I think that was really the journey really from there. I talked to him a little bit more, but that was basically his job. Like, he came in, he like really fostered this connection. He helped me to like believe in the phenomena and to really test it. And then he's like, hey, by the way, like, I'm not really available right now, but I'll put you in contact with your main contact. I was like, I thought you were my main contact. Why'd you come in?
He's just like the switchboard, the Arcturian switchboard operator.
And he was like, yep, there's a being. You've met him before in some of your other like big awakening experiences that you've written off. But like, here's this being. He'll come back in. You know him as Cyborg, because at the time I like tried to pull through a name. This was years back. And I got Cyborg and I was like, this makes no sense. And I wrote it off. But as I sat with it again, like, I was like, cool. So what's your name? Like, I don't think it's Cyborg. That's ridiculous. And he's like, no, it's closer to Burgiel. And I was like, all right, like, this is it. And that was kind of the beginning of everything.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting because we've just had a podcast that was started. So on Fridays, it's the P-Head Posse episodes, and
cool.
Wonderful friend Alexa runs those, and it's just like all listeners, taking over the show. And so that. Alexa runs it, and different people come on and highlight their stories. And one of these people, Ambi, really hit it. Who's a medium, hit it off with Alexa. She just started having a channeling experience recently. She's been a psychic medium for a while. Started opening up to what she was being told was an Arcturion. The first thing then they just launched their own podcast called Inner Bloom that's talking to this Arcturion, and they just announced it on last Friday's P-Head Posse episode that they're doing their own. And the first thing out of this entity's mouth was, well, Brandon's one of us. He's definitely Arcturian, and at his roots in some way. And I don't know what that means. If that just means like who knows? Totally. But if we're talking like physical roots, soul level roots, I'm assuming more soul level roots, but what was interesting about synchronistically was this just came up like last week. And the first time I'd heard this was 4 years before, when a mutual friend of actually Michael, your brother, and I's Daniel Raphael, I don't know if you know him. First time I ever met him, he said, oh, you're Arcturian. Like, this is like years ago. And I'm like, what? I'd never even heard the word then. So I hadn't heard it since then. And then turns out the day I hear it again, years later, he happens to be coming to my house, which he's only been to my house a few times ever. And so I'm like, whoa, that's an interesting synchronicity. He's coming back here years later, the same day I hear this information again. Now you're sort of bringing up this Arcturian stuff again. So it's really, really fascinating. So you've been talking to this entity ever since, and how long ago was this?
That was in November of 2016. So it's been
too long ago.
Not quite 2 years. Not long ago at all. No, I mean, this is all so new in my life. So new.
Wow. And it seems like, David, as someone who, as you asked, do you feel like you're ever channeling? Well, I feel like everything to some degree is some level of channeling. Like all art form is channeling. When we talk, where's the information coming from all the time? Is it being generated in our brain? Is it coming from our higher self? I think there's times when maybe everyone is tapping into something, and just like there's varying degrees of there's subtlety and layers of the onion, if you will, with all experience. This seems just like a deeper level and layer where you're gotten heightened sensitivity, and you're able to really discern like between yourself, your higher self, and some other non-physical energy. The most fascinating thing for me about people who are claiming to channel, one, it seems to be becoming more and more prevalent. One of my favorite books ever is funny enough, yours, the Ascension Manual for Planet Earth, the book Oneness by Rasha. I don't know if you're familiar. It's one of my favorite all-time books. I read a chapter randomly over the last year from the show, and I always say it's the guidebook for Ascension, and that's what it seems like to me. Having originally read it like 10 years ago, it's like, here's what you can expect as you expand yourself vibrationally, as you evolve into the next greatest and greatest version of yourselves. And it's really held true for me, even coming back and rereading it on the show, sporadically like I've been doing. But I take that information. It's supposedly received and transcribed by an entity that referred to themselves as Oneness, right? And I take that book. It is so brilliant, high vibe, poetically, just beautifully written. I take someone like Esther Hicks, who claims to channel Abraham. She's so eloquent. It's so powerful. Bashar, all these characters, like some of the greatest teachings I've come across are coming from people who are claiming to channel. And so I'm like, I always say, I don't really care at the end of the day. I mean, I think it's a really interesting concept and phenomenon. But at the end of the day, what's most important is the information. And if the information that is brilliant and just like obviously super inspired, like you kind of said with your friend, to me, that's like a big feather in the cap towards this probably is what they're claiming it is, because this person doesn't seem hokey and stupid and dumb. They seem brilliant, you know? Yeah. And that is sort of my take on it. Whenever people ask me what I think of it, what's the information? And that's sort of how I, you know, what do they sound and feel like? And that's how I sort of gauge it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think based on the context that I've kind of received from Burgael since I've started channeling, I mean, I believe that I love that you said that I mean, are we channeling right now? Are we bringing through like stuff? You know, I think it's a much normal experience than we're used to, like with incredible art pieces. And so essentially that we're anchoring in a higher version of our soul into our bodies. So there's this idea of the Oversoul, and it's kind of you see it pop up in other esoteric traditions and in other channelings and in all of that. The context I received is, if you imagine the seed of life image, you familiar with that image? Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of the 7 circles interlocking. The way I've had it described to me is if we're that center circle. Oh yeah, I love it. Hey, have you seen that one image that's that's plastered all over all of your logos? So what I've heard is that we are the center circle of that image. That's the metaphor that they use. Essentially, that is our individuated soul. And if you expand out those circles all the way, like almost infinitely, right? You would eventually get to the totality of all consciousness. That's the way I've had it described to me. But that unit of the seed of life is described as the Oversoul. And what I'm told is that when we plug into that unit of consciousness, we gain access to, one, the highest version of our soul, because it's that center circle. So we're plugging into deeper layers of ourself. But we're also inherently plugging into other skills, ideas, consciousnesses that come with plugging into a collective consciousness. And because it's all a interconnected lattice, we're actually plugging into a unit of consciousness that has direct access to the totality of consciousness. And I think that's where all of these flow states are really starting to head. I think that's what we're starting to see with our kind of just very basic science experiments and understanding of flow states. I think we're starting to see the next evolution of our species, where we're anchoring a unit of consciousness that's attached basically to everything. And from that space, I mean, all of these things make so much sense. And I think our bodies are the things that end up kind of interpreting them different ways. Like when I imagine your gifts, like I feel them very here, right? Like there's a sense of like you're spotting the divine connectedness here on this planet, but it's a weird sense. Like it's weird to be able to feel that. And like I'm kind of connected almost like telepathically to this being. And my beloved Miriam, like she's incredibly here too as well, but she also like speaks light language, and she experiences this like deep truth barometer where she can like fire back and forth with what is her highest truth, like very, very, very quickly. And she's like very intuitively tapped in. I think some people see colors, some people hear tones, some people sing. I think they're all different interpretations of us plugging into everything, and really from this sustainable unit of consciousness that we're learning to anchor here.
Wow. Yeah. Brilliant. You know, in that book, Oneness, you know, which basically talks about this very thing as we sort of, and I can't wait to dive into yours, the Ascension Manual for Planet Earth, and kind of see what's there. And I'm sure there'll be some overlap is my feeling. But she talks about in that book that, you know, as we continue on this journey of, you know, the planet that we live on, the realm that I live in this moment is very different than when I was a child or when you were a child. We are ascending vibrationally. And as we move into this next version of, you know, anchoring the new earth, if you will, it's these gifts become much more commonplace. So it's like, this is one of the side effects of, you know, the process that we're undergoing. And so it's just fascinating to see it. Having read that originally, like I said, 10 years ago or so, now it's like, you know, how many friends do I have who channel or have, you know, experiences with multidimensional, you know, entities or crazy magic and synchronicities in their physical reality? It's just like, it's become like, just in my world, it's like, oh, it's like the new normal.
Absolutely.
such a beautiful thing. And, and I'm hearing the same thing from listeners too. That's what's great is you have people who are like, wow, 6 months ago, I was a Jehovah Witness or in this, whatever, this old paradigm kind of, and the box got completely blown out of the water. Now I'm having experiences beyond anything I could have imagined months ago. It seems to be going really fast. And I'd be curious. A couple things. One, I'd love to hear, and maybe you choose the order. I'd love if you're feeling up for it at some point during this conversation that you could do a little channeling. And also, totally. I'd love to, of course, dig in to the Ascension Manual and what are some of the things that you foresee coming down the road as we sort of evolve into the next greatest and grandest version of humanity.
Yeah, I love it. This is a perfect place to channel. It'll take me about maybe like 30 seconds to a minute to drop in, so we can maybe clip it or whatever that would look like. But then I'll bring Brigale through and we can start chatting about it. And feel free to ask him all those questions too. I think it'll definitely be more of a dialogue than like we're here to deliver this beautiful message.
Love it.
So yeah, let's do it.
Excellent. Well, now seems like a good moment to take a quick minute to tell those of you who aren't familiar a bit about our sponsor, Gaia. I've been a big fan of Gaia for many years now, which is why they're the only content provider I've ever reached out to in regards to potentially supporting this podcast. So, needless to say, I'm very excited they're now supporting the show. Gaia truly is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web. They have an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. Just to give you an example, on the show Missing Links, the incredible researcher Greg Braden explores all the biggest questions concerning who we are, where we come from, where we're going, by connecting the missing links between science and spirituality to complete our understanding of humanity's history and to better understand the interconnectedness of all things. Awesome, right? And that's just one example. As you guys constantly hear me say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to go deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out.
So essentially, to be able to describe a little bit of the experience, the first thing that I'm doing is I'm calling in my Oversoul. So, I mean, that's the next unit of consciousness, right? So I'm calling in that unit, and Brigale is another individuation within my Oversoul. So basically, as that anchors, then I can kind of flip through the energetics that are there and call in Brigale, and then it's like it kind of clicks into gear. So cool. Just kind of sitting and anchoring the Oversoul energetics. And let's call in Brigale. All right. Hello. It's a pleasure to be here transmitting in this particular way. How are you doing today, Brandon?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful as well. Thank you for having us on and creating such a space where we're able to do this. It's not very often that we get to come through in public settings other than perhaps David's podcast. So it's beautiful that you've fostered such a community to be able to really leave space for these phenomena in a collective that may not otherwise quite be open to this just yet.
Right. Yeah, I would say that we are on the cutting edge for this particular 3D reality, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Absolutely.
So, where do we begin? So, should I just ask you some questions, or do you have anything in particular that you feel called to share?
We'd love to just take your questions, and we can weave through anything that's here within that. Okay,
excellent. So, first question that comes to mind is just a little bit of understanding your consciousness, what Absolutely. Your experience is, where you're at, where are you? What exactly is the nature of your experience and relative to ours?
Well, in many ways, it's very similar to your experience. I am also existing within a trifecta, which is one of the things we talk about, a body with a soul anchored into it, an emergent ego structure that keeps track just as I. So I'm also in a physicality. I'm not just some etheric being hanging out, although the connection with David is very etheric in nature. We're making this connection through consciousness itself, through what we call the soul architecture. So in this actual connection, David's really, in a way, pulling down the Oversoul structure, anchoring in, and then being able to connect with my own consciousness. In a way, we're linking up. So that's really my experience throughout this, is very similar to David's experience. We're linking up our consciousnesses, so we're able to transmit and receive data back and forth, because really we're sharing a unit of consciousness. It'd be very similar to if you had another individual in your brain, although that could get quite annoying, of course, but that you could turn on and off really at will. But as far as my own physical environment, I'm here transmitting on a craft. In many ways, I'm a representative of other civilizations. There's a larger interstellar alliance of civilizations that are very invested in the overall ascension of humankind at this time, and have really been called here by you as a species, because there's a necessity for us to be here to be able to provide some context that otherwise you wouldn't necessarily be able to have as quickly. So my personal mission, and this is really aligned with a much larger orchestration of civilizations that are here to help synchronistically, and many of the individual awakenings of the individuals that you're talking to on a very regular basis. It is really my mission and our mission to be able to accelerate this next wave of human evolution from about what would naturally occur within 500 to 800 years down to a significantly shorter time frame. And the quicker we can do that, the more likely it is that Earth has a very beautiful outcome at the end.
I see. Interesting. So, is it? Let me see which direction I go here. So, your Arcturion is your physical reality, okay? And how about your physical age?
So, I'm from Sirius.
Okay.
But the other being within our Oversoul unit is Arcturion. Age is in many ways a very interesting concept, because in our civilization we don't necessarily link this to the physical vessel that we're in, and our consciousness is able to be carried over from vessel to vessel in a way. So this is also something that Neil Donald Walsh wrought through in the Awaken the Species text that came through fairly recently. This is something that individuals are beginning to understand about the highly evolved beings, as he calls them, is that we're, by really being able to stay connected to the totality of existence, we're able to be reminded of our truest essence extremely quickly. And in that, the idea of age, even here on Earth, is becoming more and more of a nonsensical idea. Individuals who are extremely young are waking up extremely quickly, and individuals who have been here for a very long time may not have access to as much of what many individuals consider even to be common intuitive sense.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely see that, where age is sort of getting very, very blurry. Time and
absolutely.
You know, all of that is getting very blurry in my world, at least. So, wow. So have you had experiences then on planet Earth that you recall yourself?
In many ways, this ties to another question that's really lingering here, right? I mean, that was a fairly large statement to say, increase the probability of Earth continuing to exist. The Earth in our timeline is essentially in non-existence. So the Earth that really all that is has experienced up until this point, there have been quite a few other timelines, but this Earth has been really continuing to ride these same paradigms into non-existence. So in this particular timeline that you're currently living in, however, the chance of Earth being the beautiful place that really everyone's looking for and hoping for and feeling is increased substantially. And this is really one of the largest wounds within the collective at this time, is that when most individuals came in, when most of their souls inhabited this physicality, there was roughly a 40 to 45% chance that the Earth was going to make it, quote unquote. And this is really one of the biggest roots of the collective insecurity and uncertainty about the future. This is one of the roots of deep soul fear, not just biological fear. And so what we are really wanting to be able to transmit more and more is that the work that you are doing and even have done during your lifetimes here, due to this massive acceleration, due to this massive awakening that's happening, has increased those probabilities from something much more dismal to in the mid to high 90s as far as potentialities. Now, things are always possible to continue to shift. The future's always really a potentiality matrix. There are probabilities that are most energized at any given time, as is the case. Right? This is 95 to 96% energized, but there's still other potentialities that are available. Still, the future is looking very bright, really in part due to the work that you do, due to the work that all of your listeners do, and due to the continual ascension, and due to the very fact that I'm able to be here transmitting through David, talking to you, to this audience at this time. That in itself is a huge marker for the earth making it and awakening to its true nature.
Beautiful. Well, that's exciting. I'm certainly pleased to play my part. And, I'm curious if you have, from the vantage point where you are, if you have vantage point of all the different sort of probabilities and how they play out, and including down to David's probabilities as a individual, on upwards to the collective, or my individual on to the collective. Like, is that something that you get access to at your level of evolution?
Yes, and in a way that's something that even many human beings currently have access to. All of this information is readily available because we're all connected to the same consciousness. In essence, we're all the same thing. So it's not unusual for a finger to get a message from the brain within a body. And similar, it's not unusual for us to be able to get a message when it is aligned. So it's not something that we go digging through every human's potentialities to understand them. It's much more so that when there are synchronicities like this, where we're here, where we're talking, we could pull up your data if it were in the highest benefit to do so. And we do regularly pull up David's data. But on a much larger collective scale, we're constantly monitoring that. And I'm not speaking just to myself. I'm speaking to the many, many civilizations and beings that are here and very much invested in the future of Earth. Not only are we monitoring it, but we're actively energizing, in a way, from kind of the current earthly understanding, where we're giving our intention and love towards those potentialities on a very, very continual basis to help further make that possible.
Watering the seed, essentially.
Absolutely.
So how does it play out with someone who's in 3D at the level of awareness and perspective that I'm viewing reality from? How does it play out for this type of exchange to happen with my own, higher self, oversoul, guides, whatever energies are most closely connected to me in the circle that David talked about earlier? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Absolutely. In many ways, you're already pulling information from the Oversoul. In many ways, you're already on this acceleration. It's something that you've heard before, but you have a significantly more grounded perspective here. And in many ways, that's very on purpose. If you're going to be at the very cutting edge of spirituality and a very public figure, it almost is necessitated that you have a level of a grounded nature, or else you'll be completely ridiculed. So by your very being here and very, very grounded in the magical nature of existence itself during this particular time, with a level of exposure that you do have currently, you're able to play that role very, very well. Now, it's not to say that if you were to then pull through other things that you would be ridiculed. That's absolutely not what we're saying. But there's a level of groundedness that will be necessitated by your particular role, and in a way is perfectly aligned. But still, within that dynamic, there's still information that you are pulling, that feeling that you get around when someone's ready for the talk, that feeling that you get when you are feeling those synchronicities and tracing them. In essence, you're following the energetic of that synchronicity and stitching together all of the events as you go along. From our perspective, what you're doing is tracing that energetic, not necessarily looking for a logical progression of events. Does that resonate?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I definitely feel that. Actually, sorry, go ahead.
Wonderful. In many ways, that's the exact same thing that David does. he's tracing the energetic of this feed and continuing to pull through these energetics. And in many ways, that's what painters do, or what happens across the board. But this is really another example of how channeling can look, so to speak. It's really just tracing an energetic.
Wonderful. What is the ideal sort of timeline unfolding look like from this moment forward, in the coming years, and I don't know, maybe next 5 years, 10 years, what does that look like for us?
Essentially, on the macro perspectives, the larger spiritual community begins to ground enough to where they can, in a way, make contact relationally with the rest of the larger scientific and political communities. Then these individuals continue to integrate into society. Basically, from the scientific perspective, there's a new reality context that begins to be expanded outwards. And from a spiritual perspective, there's a level of practicality that gets to be integrated within all of the beliefs. So really, we have two pockets of the collective that are trending in opposite directions right now. One is to understand the deep practicality, and one is to understand the unexplainable. But when the spiritual community is really able to ground that unexplainable phenomena into something that is logically sound, into something that is slightly more testable, or at least more logically sound, then you begin to broaden the perspectives of the larger consensus. It begins to continue to work into the mainstream, similar to the work that you're doing now. In essence, the work that you're doing now continues to expand, and many individuals who are seeing a larger reality context begin to work into the larger global sphere. And as that happens, and these, what you could call little beacons of light, begin to really drop into the political scene, the macroeconomic and geopolitical scene, as these beautifully connected beings begin to drop into places where they can pull very big levers, so to speak, the overall ascension, you could say, of humanity will just accelerate that much more quickly. The ultimate thing that we are looking for is a transition from what we call the first paradigm into the second paradigm. The first paradigm being the self taking from the whole in order to sustain the self. And the second paradigm be the self giving to the whole, knowing that when the whole rises, the self is still taken care of. And in fact, everyone gets better, including the self, when everyone is contributing to the entirety of the whole continuing to rise. So we're seeing a transition from mine into let's all do this together and be on Team Human, and recognize that you're all the same species, recognize that you're ultimately all here within an ecosystem that is also you. You're inseparable from the trees, from the oxygen, from the water cycles, from the many cycles of the planet. If those did not exist, human life could not be sustained. So in the recognition of the totality of Earth as one living, breathing organism, and everyone, or at least a threshold of a collective, moving towards optimizing, towards really taking that into consideration with the larger civilization design, with even day-to-day actions, that is the paradigm shift that we're here to help facilitate. And that's really the paradigm shift that we're looking for the most when we're looking at this macro perspective.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, and I definitely feel I can just look back over the last 5 years and have seen such a dramatic shift in the amount of awareness and consciousness in people that are in my own circle. Before that, it was sort of like I would read books and be really fascinated and talk about all this stuff, and people would look at you like you're crazy, or think that's interesting and go about their regular life. Now it's sort of it's definitely happening, that's for sure.
Wonderful. We love that you're seeing it as well. We love that your perspective on the ground, so to speak, matches our perspective from the ethers, monitoring and looking at all these potentialities.
What is the biggest thing you feel called to share today with the listeners at this time and space as we're recording here?
Really, in essence, everything that we've wanted to share has already been landed, and it's weaved so beautifully throughout these questions. There are some really substantial, in a way, ideas that are larger than most individuals can integrate in a single sitting that really will begin to work into the consciousness. We've planted some seeds, so to speak, that will continue to be watered. Really, this whole centric paradigm is what we are looking to continue to help facilitate. And if there are any individuals who are feeling more deeply called to continue to explore this, then there is the Ascension Manual for Planet Earth. Then there are texts and settings where we're continuing to disseminate those on a greater scale. But really, for the purpose of this particular container, we don't want to stretch it too far. We're really feeling, in a way, almost the energetic bounds of what we're capable of being able to bring through in this single moment. So from that perspective, we just really want to be able to thank you before we leave for this wonderful opportunity to be able to bring through what we already have brought through, and really see you and honor you in your deep path of spotting the synchronicities, and of really encouraging each and every individual here to spot the synchronicities, to continue to trace those threads of positivity, trace those threads of greater awareness. The work you do every day is something that we see, we feel, and we deeply, deeply honor.
Oh, well, thank you for that. That's well received and beautiful, and it was quite the pleasure to connect with you.
Wonderful. Quite the pleasure to connect with you as well. We'll kick it back to David in a moment. Farewell.
Farewell.
All right.
Welcome back. How does that feel for you?
Stuff. It's honestly weird every time coming back. Because I'm sitting, first off, I'm sitting with my eyes closed and I'm just feeling a bunch of energy. And I imagine it's actually very similar to when you're tracing a synchronicity. It's almost like there's pieces of your awareness that just are being filled by bandwidth. So you're not really noticing some of the exterior things outside of the synchronicity. It kind of feels like that for me. Like when I'm tracing this energetic, I come back and I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm like talking to Brandon, like I'm on this phone, I'm on this interview. I'm like, okay, we're like doing this, and I kind of got to like land back in progressively.
It's kind of like being shaken out of a dream or something, and like, oh, okay, hold on, totally. I'm behind the wheel, and I got to keep driving, or I'm going to go off the side.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes, and like even in this case, I'm like, man, Burgail shared way more than I thought he was going to, and like got in, like really got into it. It just really speaks to like this container and to all your listeners. Like this is a beautiful, beautiful space.
Yeah, I kind of went down some, a rabbit hole of questions that I haven't really asked anyone before in the state, and so it was really interesting and had some beautiful things to share and perspective to share. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was my pleasure.
So let's switch gears just a little bit and talk a little bit about your podcast. I love the name. I love what you're doing, the highlight reel, the REAL. And, the thing about it is that you're doing that I resonate with so closely is it's always about finding the perspective that feels the best. It's like the way I put it, David, is like, what story are you going to tell? Abracadabra, as I speak, I create. It's like let's go beyond the surface level of what's happening in politics, or, let's try and dig a little deeper and see where there might be, a silver lining. There might be a diamond behind this lump of coal. And you're doing that so well from the episodes that I've listened to. And so maybe you can just speak a little bit about your path doing that and why you feel called, for that particular format.
Totally. What this started as was me just channeling Burgail. And that's still in the Sunday show. So I go through and we talk about living your life's purpose. We talk about like anchoring in future self energetics. We talk about like, how do I know if I'm on track? Like all of these kind of larger existential questions. And sometimes we'll do collective updates there as well. But recently I've just been so drawn to the news, and it's weird because throughout pretty much my whole life, first I was a Jehovah's Witness, and they say we're politically neutral, which basically means like we don't talk about the world. We like stay out of all the affairs.
Right.
So I never registered to vote, or like my parents never voted when I was younger. We just kind of stayed out of everything. And even coming into the conscious community, I was like, why would I enter the news? Why would I just barrage myself down with all of these negative perspectives? But lately there's been this huge call back, and I think it's because one, I think I'm just really meant to be here right now to really understand the world on a deeper level, to get more grounded perspectives on what this world is and how it works.
Right.
But two, there's this sense of if I'm channeling this being and have all of this existential relief in my own individual life, and when I read the news, I can come to these perspectives. who am I to not share those on a regular basis? I just don't see any sources out there that are really diving into current events with spiritual perspectives. Like I see happy perspectives and I see really negative perspectives, but I don't see conscious, broad spectrum, like very conscious perspectives on what would be considered the bad stuff, on like politics or on like what's happening with global warming or with the environment. So that's really been my kind of goal from the beginning with this. And now I do a Monday to Friday show called The Daily Wake Up. It's on the highlight reel. It's still there, but that's what the segment's called. And we just dive into the news. They're short, they're 10 minutes. And I mean, that's really my goal there, is to just to find a perspective on what's happening that leaves me both informed and empowered.
Yeah, I love it. And it's, as soon as I was exposed to your show and that whole idea, I'm like, yes, this is like, we actually started out, if you early shows of Positive Head, 3 years ago, I had a co-host, Dalian at the time, and he would share a bit of news. Yeah, a lot of times it would be like weirder things or what have you, but that was the original part of the show, was sharing some piece of news. And then when he departed as my co-host, people would like sometimes, I missed the mysterious news, like where's it at, and so as soon as I saw you doing that, and I thought, wow, I think everything is the greatest superpower we all have at this time is transmuting perspective, digging deeper to see a broader picture, like zooming out and seeing more. Here's why Trump is actually beneficial to the planet. It's causing us to all come together, or whatever it is, and a lot of people are missing that. Yeah, it is a tricky one for a lot of people. It's a trigger, right? And your triggers are your treasures. And it's like if something's triggering you there's a gift there for you, I believe.
Yeah. At the very least, it's getting through another objection of reality, so we can like really play and plug in with what's here. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how often do people come together because of something, quote unquote bad, right? Totally. Or negative. So it's really, I definitely applaud what you're doing. And I certainly think some people that are hearing you here will be very intrigued to tune in. I definitely recommend it. And you haven't been at it very long either, right?
No, just started. My 50th episode went out yesterday. So,
wow.
I mean, not too long.
That's still a lot. I mean, considering you're doing it 5 days a week, so you're as crazy as I am. I think we might be in a very small group of 5 day a weekers. So good on you, man.
Yeah, doing something, putting out a creation every day is pretty substantial. I mean, there was a while, it was probably only 3 or 4 weeks, but I was trying to do a daily vlog on YouTube, and man, it is hard to record something throughout the entire day, or even just record a little perspective and to edit it to publish every single day. But I mean, that's just where I feel called, and I think you're the same. I mean, it's just like, how can we not put this out more frequently? Like these messages get out, and it just feels very, very right now.
Yeah. It's just, for me, it's like, it's such a wonderful way to start my day and set my vibrational tone, set my, let me get myself into this. I always say we teach best what we most need to learn. It's like as I'm going through all of these things that are coming through and that want to be addressed, and, that arise through listeners or whatever pops up in my own world, it's like, oh, these are the things that are meant to get my energy and attention right now. And it's helping me to set my own perspective, to tell the story that I want to see, live and breathe in the world. And it's just it's a beautiful thing, and by doing so, we're showing other people how to do the same thing as we figure it out ourselves, and it's awesome.
Totally. I love that you said these are the things that I'm being called into right now. That's huge. I mean, I really think been the whole part of my journey. I mean, I continue to get that confirmed, because then Burgail I feel him using almost my neural circuitry, using my own information to be able to pull from. Because in a way, like, he's calling on the other side of the phone, but I need to be able to translate it into the English language. Like, I'm pulling the energy. But like, I need to be able to articulate these words and have a loose understanding of the landscape. So, I mean, I feel it time and time again. And I think it's really obvious with my path, but I think it's universal across the board. Like, when we're being called into something, there's a very specific reason that we're being so strongly pulled towards, like, the gene keys or human design, or towards astrology, or towards this particular aspect of life, or the etheric realms, or of something unexplainable. Like, there's something there for us in the next iteration of ourself, that really includes that knowledge or understanding that we couldn't be that next iteration without.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now, another thing that, surprise, surprise, we're on alignment with, is that you're doing some work also in soul aligned business and sort of helping to usher in the next wave of, what the future business looks like. You want to speak a little bit on that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was talking with Michael about this maybe an hour ago. We did a Facebook Live, and something I said there was, I think soul has integrated into every other aspect of life.
Yeah.
Like when I think about health, I see all the intuitive health practices, like check in with your body, see what's there. Oh, if this part of your body hurts, like check the metaphysical meaning of it. And it's integrated into relationships, right? We talk about twin flames. We talk about soul aligned relationships and really being more of our truest essence so we can call in the person who we're meant to be with. I think it's integrated into every other aspect. But then I look out along the landscape I was building these things. I was the person who was implementing these things for these businesses. And what I saw just time and time again was that it had nothing to do with soul. It had nothing to do with what they were feeling or what they were intuiting or what they were genuinely wanting to bring into the world. It was like what has worked since the time where we were mailing postcards with sales letters on them in the mail. Like the direct response marketing hasn't changed very much since the time we were getting junk mail. And it's time for an update in that, where we're integrating our soul truth deeply into our business and allowing that to really refine our understanding there. So my partner Miriam, she's incredible too. We're really partnering to start a mastermind where we're helping people to bring through their soul aligned businesses, but really just holding space for that and doing that in community, where the standard is listen, let's bring through your business, not let's bring through your business crammed into the strategy that we read online in 2002 that we think we need to do to build business. Like it's time for a whole new iteration of business. It's time for us to bring through the next iteration of what soul aligned business looks like. So let's like drive this forward. Let's be that. Let's be these leaders of the second paradigm.
Love that. Yeah, I think the most important thing, having been a serial entrepreneur my whole life, is realizing at this point, everything you're doing needs to be in some way, serving others. Like how can I make sure whatever I'm doing from a work, business standpoint is serving others? And, this podcast I recently aligned with Purium. I don't know if you're familiar with Purium or not, but you might want to check it out. Actually, the listeners have heard me talk about it. If you go to positivehead.com/transformation, I won't go into a lot about it now, but it's basically new school ethical network marketing with like organic, high vibe, these core 4 products to take every day that I had the founder on the podcast a few months ago, David Sandoval, and this is a guy who like cries talking about the aim of the company is to heal the world, help heal the planet with superfoods and bring us back into balance with superfoods. And he pays himself a very little pay for having such a successful company. It's all about, you can tell the intention is really there. And so I ended up aligning with it because, understanding business a little bit more than maybe the average person. I've had some success in the Inc. 500 fastest growing private company in the US at one time and things like that. And people like Tony Robbins talk about like, and he's a guy who coaches like people at $1 billion companies. And he says, if you want to start a business, the first thing I recommend is don't, because it takes so many hats you need to wear. So many hats that, and I learned this myself. I'm really good at this or really good at this, maybe not as good at, you got marketing and accounting and HR and, it's usually too much. Yeah. And we do it anyway. And then most of them end up failing, the vast majority. And so what he's saying is, hey, find a really high vibe, amazing product, network marketing. It's already plugged in for you. You focus on one aspect of it. And of course, this is a model that's gotten a lot of negativity because it's been abused in the past by like shyster people and shysty products and people promising the world that was very overstated. But when you look at it with a high vibe sort of product and intention, I believe it's a very powerful way to approach it. But so I just love the idea of taking any outside the box business model. One that my travel company is looking to implement is called holacracy, which is sort of a flat organizational structure. It's instead of having the hierarchy of the president, the CEO, president, vice president, and it's like
Totally.
piss down, kiss up, which was designed in like the Industrial Revolution. Like it's totally outdated. It's a flat structure that's based off of the way the body works. You have these things, these groups of cells called holons, and they work together, these cells, and then they cross communicate with other groups of cells and then organs. And so it's set up pretty much the same way. And, why they call it holacracy. So you might want to check that out as well. And any of you guys listening who are interested in this, I don't want to go too deep down the business rabbit hole, but since, that's something that you're pursuing, bringing awareness to, I thought I would share a little bit about some of the things that I've sort of stumbled on that I'm really feeling as sort of next level business.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love the untraditional business practices. I love seeing just new startups that are just soul deeply aligned. And I think there's this pocket of spiritual entrepreneurs that are really trying to get their messages out, and they can't do it. Like they're bumping up against just so much of a lack of integrity in the industry, and have no idea how to reconcile that. And there's so much possibility to literally tap in. I mean, something that Miriam talks about all the time is just, hey, like what if you just ask the field of your business? She'll just ask people that question, and you see the aha moment in their eyes. They're like, oh my goodness, I can go and have a board reading with my business. I can tap in and feel the intelligence of my business and what's coming, and check in for what's next. And I think there's ways to integrate our spirituality and our understanding there into a place where we've only had pure practicality, where we've only had, here's the quant, here's the numbers, here's how it works. And if you don't do this, then you're going to fail. I think there's definitely room to integrate like deep soul orchestration into all of this.
Yeah, I feel like it's an area that there needs to be deep healing, because there's been so much of us preying on each other, to like we just talked about when you were channeling, this whole what was the term that it was put, first paradigm and second paradigm, right? Yeah. So in the first paradigm, it's like me, how do I, and now we're moving into the second paradigm when you realize, okay, I can find a way to serve others and know that the resources, the abundance comes as a natural byproduct and not so much the aim of what I'm doing. Instead, moving into a state of trust around that, and not saying, okay, how do I make as much money as possible? How do I bring the greatest value and service, and then let that abundance that I need to survive in our current monetary system come as a byproduct, not as the primary aim of why I'm doing what I'm doing.
I love that. That almost exact progression is super mapped over really well in the book too. In the Ascension manual, there's something called the levels of clearance, and essentially it goes from, I mean, there's like completely blown out, there's like totally fried, like you can't take any more information in, you're so triggered. That's kind of like they call it level 0, but then level 1 is like survival based. So it's like, if I don't do A, B, and C, then I'm going to die. Like if I don't go to my coal job, I'm going to die. That's why I'm going to go vote for Trump, because like if he's bringing back coal, like this is what I need to do to survive. Like there's this, if I don't do A, B, and C, like I'm absolutely going to die. And then it goes into material and emotional, which are kind of side by side, and that then pops out into self-acceptance. And then from there is an impact-driven and like global education. It's just cool to hear you speaking into lots of the same journey, because I see it everywhere now. I'm like, oh yeah, like it makes sense. Like that's a material driver that's driving really still with the underlying assumption of like, if I don't do this, then I'm not going to be taken care of, or material wealth is what's going to take care of me. Or on the other hand, like emotional pure bliss is what's going to take care of me, versus like, okay, like I accept that I'm going to have ups and downs, and I'm going to continue to be a positive person. I'm going to continue to move forward and like really trust. Soul actualize and really give it my all. Yeah. And trust, but like, I'm not going to make 100% bliss my standard anymore. Like let's come to deep self-acceptance and like continue to move on beyond that too. It's just, it's just super cool to hear that echo. That was another little piece that like I was like, oh, that's awesome. That's the levels of clearance that he's speaking into without ever hearing or seeing the model.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like what you just touched on is great. Is like people think, oftentimes, I've got to be in this positive, blissed out state all the time. It's like, what I say is it's not about always being, you're not always going to be just blissed out, but you can be at peace with what is, and that's really what I feel like is the goal. That's sort of becoming the observer, the unmoved mover behind it all. The higher self is there, and it's at peace with the whole process. You're observing the story. You're not the story. And that really is powerful when people can get, okay, all right, that's okay. I'm going to have days where my energy's low or I'm sad about this. And that's beautiful. That's a part of the art. Like, what painting looks good without any shadow painted on it? None. So it's like, it's a key component. And this whole abundance thing, it's like, it's, I heard it said a long time ago, I can't remember where, but it's so true. It's like most people are sitting on the back of a whale and fishing for a minnow. It's like you're not even realizing how abundant you are. And once you understand that you are, as you so eloquently put it, the concentric circles expand outward, and that is you. And that's the energy and abundance that created all things, right? And when you understand that you're that powerful and you're that tapped in and you have that much abundance at your disposal, not only the abundance that created this physical planet, everything that's non-physical and every other physical planet that you can see when you gaze out into the stars at night, it's like that's all your handiwork to some degree, just only so many concentric circles out. And when you can really anchor that into your heart, it's like you kind of can relax about this unfolding that's taking place.
Totally. And I mean, even from the I always think back to the version of me that's so skeptical and so atheist and so against anything that sounds fluffy at all. And I almost find myself always speaking to that version of me. And there are times where I just go super practical and I'm like, I'm okay right now. What am I doing worrying about? I'm actually not even hope. I'm actually genuinely okay no matter how bad my situation gets. And there's never been a time where I've been really, really, really at a place where I'm going to die. And I've hit through all the bottoms. There have been times where, I think back, there was a time where I was homeless for a little bit and I didn't know what to do. And I was in a big business transition and I was all right, I'm just going to go live in my car for a couple of weeks. And even during that, I was walking into a Starbucks and getting an oatmeal and oh, can I have some hot water? And I had so much abundance just because I lived here in America and just because I was continuing to live. And I think it's funny to get really, really practical and to realize that in a way, the fear of what's going to happen in the future is the actual delusion. It's not actually the abundant mindset that's fluffy or delusional. It's literally the other way because it's never happened before. We haven't completely crumpled and lost everything and died. We're still here. We've always been taken care of.
Always. That's the great thing about it. And even that experience of living in your car, how much can you look back and say, wow, what a great experience. How that gave me character, how that helped mold me into who and what I am now, right? Every piece of growth along the way, it's the butterfly doesn't always look pretty on the path to becoming a butterfly. It's there's stages there that look a little wonky, right? And it's when you can understand and see that there's never been, if you think back, anyone listening, if you think back to any moment that's ever been in your life that you can recall, since you've existed in this 3D reality, you've maybe had many challenges. Some of you had some really intense challenges, but guess what? You made it through it, and there was never a moment that you couldn't figure out and deal with ever. You're still here. You wouldn't be listening, right? So it's always, if you check in with yourself now, right now, guess what? You may have been stressed before starting to listen to this, but if you check in now, guess what? You're okay. You've got what you need. You've got enough oatmeal to get you to the next stage, to the next step. And it's all, and if you check back, that's always been the case. It doesn't mean it wasn't challenging. And if it has been challenging, that's because your soul's a badass and wanted to experience, some different shades of experience, which are crafting you into the butterfly that you're being born into. And when you can trust all of that and just let go of all the fear and say, hey, I don't know what now is going to be next, but I know it'll be like every other now, and I'll have the tools I need to deal with it and make the appropriate choice to continue on. and I'm going to be at peace. I'm going to be at peace with it. Even if I don't like it, I'm going to be at peace with it. No, by not resisting it, what we resist persists. What we accept, we move through. And by loving it, wrapping my arms around it, that thing that I don't really care for in the future now, cool, I'm going to transmute it in that way and move on to the next thing. And that's going to bring more things to be grateful for.
I love that, Brandon. It's realizations like that like I remember this time I was sitting going into deep meditation, and I was thinking about like, how do I create a financial foundation for myself? Like near the beginnings of my channeling, I was like, this makes no sense. How am I going to create a foundation for myself? And I was sitting in channel, and all of these same ideas were floating up, and it's still my phone background. I think I may have just changed it to Seattle because we're kind of future pacing to Seattle a little bit, but my phone background for the past few months has been, dear one, you're always taken care of. Remember, you build from a foundation of safety, not for one. Now what? And I would look at this every single day and I go, oh, like this is a foundation of safety. I'm not building for any foundation of safety. I'm good forever. Now what? Like, now what am I going to do with my soul? What am I going to do with my life? What am I going to do? What's my life purpose? All of those questions emerge from that space, but it's just like that was it. Like you build from a foundation of safety, not for one.
Oh, that's so powerful. I'm definitely going to remember that one. It makes me think, something that I've been saying and feeling for a long time is you're an eternal being that's always been and always will be, and change is guaranteed. What else matters? If you don't like something, change is guaranteed. You're eternal. You have always been. You always will be. What else matters? You don't like it? Guess what? It's going to change. What else matters? It's just like you are going to exist and move through whatever it is. So relax into that. We're floating in eternity, y'all. So it's so good. It's so good. Well, David, I'd love to get from you a, one of my go-to questions. Of course, a story of synchronicity, a serendipity, positive paranormal story. I mean, as if channeling wasn't enough. I mean, you get off the hook if you don't have one. But if you have a good story of synchronicity or serendipity or something that you'd like to share, I'm such a sucker for a good story.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of a continual synchronicity. I mean, they're everywhere, man. Like when you're looking for synchronicities and when you're open to spot them, and even the simplest things like a butterfly flying by right as you're thinking that thought, or a bee flying by right as you're thinking that thought. I love the little day-to-day synchronicities. But I think the thing that Miriam and I watch out the most for is when we're kind of driving or when we're out, we're always looking for Teslas. One, we're future pacing a little bit. We love the idea of an electric car that's sexy, that's beautiful, that literally is the future in so many ways. But we also have what we call a Tesla tally. So every time we see a Tesla, we write down $100,000, and we've been adding up the sum total for like a little over a year now. And we just sit and we just keep counting these Teslas. And the thing that pops up the most, and I think the way that I experience synchronicity the most, is as confirmation. So we'll be talking about something, or we'll be thinking about something, and something will shift, and we'll have this very expansive idea, like, oh, what if we did this in our business, or what if this happened, or what if we talked about going to Seattle again, or hey, let's talk about our mastermind. It's always in those moments that we'll see a Tesla and they'll drive by, and it's cool because we've linked that with abundance, because we're tallying it up. It's this fun game that we play. There's this beautiful kind of association that we have in our minds between that. So I think when those associations are created, like the way that the synchronicities drop in tend to tailor so that it hits us in a certain way. So it hits our meaning in a certain way. So I mean, that's the way that I experience just like this deep, open, expanded feeling is like when the Teslas drive by, and it's just the funnest game to play ever.
Yeah, you touched on it in such a good way. It opens up this expanded feeling, and you're really creating permission slips and rituals. You're just co-creating. Bashar talks about permission slips. It's like you that's what you're doing. You're saying, okay, here's what this is going to mean. Here's how I'm going to use it as a trigger to open up this state of open-heartedness where energy is flowing, abundant energy is flowing, and what a fun way to allow the universe to co-create with you. It's like, oh, cool. Well, David and Miriam are going to play this game. Let's play. Let's open them up. Let's, and it's like, it's just this little dance. And I feel like that's a lot of what it's about becoming, is this dance with our higher self or the universe or whatever you want to call it, source. It's you, when you create from your end, okay, here's the rules of the game I'm going to set. Now you fill in the blanks. It becomes such a beautiful dance that is ever unfolding, and in a way that continues to blast you open and get you in the energetic state that actually attracts the thing that you want to see more of.
I love it so much. Brandon, I think you're gonna love this idea. When you get to the Ascension manual, there's this idea about synchronicities being orchestrated on the Oversoul level. So like, we're not physically orchestrating these synchronicities, but as we're plugging in with the Oversoul, basically continuing to evolve spiritually, we're being able to accelerate them more, because we're essentially opening up into this next unit of consciousness, where I almost imagine this unit of consciousness sitting, and they're like, cool, I have my 10 individuations in these civilizations, like you got your 10 individuations over here, like, hey buddy, like, how about you make your person number 7 come over with my person number 3? That'd be really cool. I almost imagine this master consciousness orchestration happening there. I think it's cool. Like, there's really something to this idea of the more that you are open to it, the more you end up seeing it. And it's weird that would happen. And it's almost too unexplainable past the rationalization of the reticular activation system. It's just too weird. It's too spot on.
It's too cool. And I can't wait till I have more access to how do I rephrase that? I look forward. I can wait. I don't want to compress time in any way, shape, or form. I look forward to the experience when I have a broader vision on the history or future of my experience with other beings like yourself. For example, the whole birthday synchronicity. To me, I'd be willing to bet we have deep soul family history. Well, what does that look like? Like, who are you and who have you been to me, and vice versa? And here we are playing oh, we're just meeting on the show, and it's like, I know enough to know there's a lot more going on than we're just meeting. It's like, now I get very curious about, okay, what does that story look like? Like, where this ever unfolding story, what's been before, what will be ahead? These are all, the little boy in me is so curious about that all the time. I have any kind of a powerful connection with anyone is like, oh, what's the broader story here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love it so much. I mean, I think I'm trying to think. I mean, since I've become a channel, I'm pretty sure this is the first podcast that I've been on publicly as a channel outside of my own. Wow. It's cool. I just love the extra added synchronicity. I actually didn't know we shared the same birthday until I hopped on this particular interview. I mean, I knew that there was a big thing around July 28th, but I didn't know, for some reason it slipped right over me that it was your birthday.
Oh wow. Okay, so yeah. That's it. It's you have added to the ever unfolding story, and who knows, maybe you'll be coming to me, hey Brandon, guess what, I met this guy and his name is Brandon in July 28th, and who knows, it'll probably just continue to unfold.
Totally. In 3 days.
In 3 days.
I can't believe this.
On our birthday. And there will be a David, and there'll be a Michael, and there'll be a Ryan.
I'm sure.
Who knows? Yeah, one of the ideas that I've had is, there's so much. Have you been to Burning Man?
I've been once. It was unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. So much. I mean, the spearhead of consciousness and creativity on the planet, in my opinion, and it's like so much magic, such a magical container. And I've thought what would be really fun, because this birthday story has continued to unfold, is like, what a fun, unique camp idea. Instead of camping with all your friends, say, okay, and being somewhat of a public figure, we could step out and say, okay, we've decided we're going to do a July 28th birthday camp, just to see what sort of energetic threads come in, between all the souls that gravitate there. And maybe the first year it'd be 10 of us or 5 of us, and who knows down the road, as we continue to step more into a timeline where we take a broader perspective or position, if you will, on the world stage in a particular timeline, is like more and more people know about it. Who knows? Maybe like years from now, there's like hundreds of people at our July 28th Burning Man camp, and it's like you're meeting these people and you find all these threads of connectivity and synchronicity. I just think that'd be like such a fun experiment in consciousness.
I love it. We'll call it the spotlight, and there will just be a huge spotlight that we all try to take away from each other. I'm like, we're all Leos.
Exactly. I'm the Leo. I'm the Alpha Leo here. Oh man, that's so good. Well, David, this has been absolutely every bit as amazing and magical as I had hoped it would be, and then some. I so appreciate you in what you're doing, and I know you're I'm so excited for you. Just releasing this book, and I want you to tell everyone how they can get it and how they can connect with you. Of course, we've already mentioned the podcast, the Highlight Reel, REAL. I definitely encourage you guys to check that out. But yeah, man, I'm just really excited to see how things continue to unfold for you and how our paths continue to interweave and connect. And this has been awesome.
Yeah, I so appreciate it too. Yeah, just such an absolute pleasure to be here. This is by far exceeding all expectations. I was like, okay, cool, we'll have a conversation. It'll be awesome. We'll talk about synchronicity. But just to feel like your ability to hang and to feel this container's ability to like cool, there's space for Burgail. There's space for like these deep esoteric conversations. It speaks so much to you. I mean, I've said this, Burgail said this probably a dozen times on this podcast, but it just speaks so much to you and to this community that you're fostering and to everyone listening. I just love it so much. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you for that. And if for everyone who wants to check out the book, what's the best way for them to get a hold of it?
Yeah, so right now it's actually just on pre-release. So the only way to get it is through Patreon, but it's $1. So it's a fairly low barrier to entry.
Pretty good deal for something titled the Ascension Manual for Planet Earth.
Yeah, I just really feel like the people being called in who are like super drawn to this work right now, and then I'm going to do like a broader release through Amazon and all the traditional methods too. But yeah, the best way to find all of my work is at indivinus.com. INDIVUS, indivinus.com. And
hold on, let me make sure you spell that. I think you might have spelled it wrong, because the way you're spell out one more time.
Yeah. INDIVINUS. I think I spelled it wrong too the first time.
Yeah. The way you said it and then the way you spelled it, I'm like, hold on. Nope, I don't think so. Yeah. Where's the N?
It's a mix between individuation and divinity, the Latin roots for them. And it's from... I love that. I was looking for a word basically to capture what this next evolution of humanity is. Like, what is this? So it came out to Homo Indivinus after sitting through all the Latin words and digging through. So Indivinus is the brand that everything comes under for everything that comes through from Burgail and the Highlight Reel and all of that stuff is at indivinus.com.
I love that. Wow. Very cool. Well, I have no doubt people will be reaching out to you and thanking you for what you've done here today and connecting and sharing so openly and beautifully. I appreciate you. It definitely doesn't surprise me at all that you're Michael's brother. You guys are both just such beautiful souls, and I look forward to crossing paths in 3D. I'm sure it's not if but when. And until then, journey well, my friend.
All right, it's been a pleasure chatting.
And happy early birthday to us. Well, by the time everyone hears this, it'll have just passed. So, yeah, what's time anyway?
Happy belated birthday to us.
Early for next year. Take care, David.
Yeah, you too.
Well, everyone, that concludes this week's interview episode. If you have enjoyed this positive download from our hearts and minds to yours, please take a minute, give us a rating or review on iTunes, since iTunes is the holy grail of all things podcasting. Your good reviews help us to reach more listeners. Also, we would be extremely appreciative if you would tell your friends and family about the show. Our sincere intent with the Positive Head podcast is to spread positivity to the world because we're selfish, quite honestly. I say that jokingly, but really only halfway joking. I'm referring to the good kind of selfish based on the knowing that we all get what we give in this life, because when we give, we're actually always giving to extensions of self, since we're all really one in the same consciousness, just in different bodies. So if you want to be a good selfish along with us by helping to spread the positivity, by all means, please proceed to shout about the Positive Head podcast from your rooftop. Otherwise, as you continue on your fabulous journey in this 3D reality, be sure to remember this. As long as you ain't dead, you're already positive ahead. Journey well, everyone, and thank you for being.